So, hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Wolfgang Göbel and I'm the founder and president of the Intersection Group. And some administrative stuff at the beginning. Today's webinar will be recorded, and all the slides will be sent to participants and all registrants. And we should have enough time for question and answers at the end. So the talk will be maybe 40 minutes or so, and then we have 15 or 20 minutes for questions and answers. So whenever a question comes up, just type it to the chat, and I will try to answer as many as possible at the end of the show. A little bit about my background. I've been working as an enterprise architect for maybe 15 years or so. And like many people in our disciplines, I was quite frustrated because of this limited impact we usually have. And for that reason, 3 years ago, I founded Architectural Thinking Association to come up with a beautiful way to do enterprise architecture. And now we merge together with an enterprise design community with Milan Günther to create Intersection Group. But I will talk about this at the end of the presentation only for a few minutes. So what's the topic of today? Goal portfolio management. So that's the strategy part, the vision mission part of enterprise design as we understand it. So it's about making decisions, the big guys in the boardrooms maybe, or more autonomous decisions that guide the enterprise in a certain direction. So maybe just like a ship, so that you make a decision and then you change the course of the ship a bit. And if you have attended some of our previous webinars, you know that we think that enterprises should be treated and seen from 3 facets. So it's very much about the architecture, the structure, the IT systems, processes, and so on, how the enterprise works, and also the experience. So what do we bring to the outer world? For us, this is the red bubble here. And then we have the green facet. And today, this talk is mostly in the green facet because that's the identity of the enterprise. That's its purpose, its mission, its strategy, maybe. Who are we? Why are we here? And of course, this is very much related to the goals. So as a summary, today I'm talking about how to invest in the best portfolio of changes, in the best goals. Where shall we go and for what reason? And that there's this big topic of strategy. So what is it and so on. We will touch this also as well. And how can we all connect this to a coherent enterprise design approach that is connected with all of our other topics we have with the Intersection Group. Goal portfolio management, as I mentioned before, is very much about making decisions. And we know today more and more decisions are being made by self-organized teams, in autonomous teams. So you have a group of people and they decide stuff that they can decide. But on the other hand, of course, there are huge board decisions. So this is a real boardroom. I think it's of FIFA, from the Federation for Football Professionals. And some decisions are made by the C-suite or the top-level executives. But no matter how you make the decisions, who make the decisions, we believe they should be based on sound information. And sound information should be based on a sound understanding of your enterprise. There's where enterprise design comes into play. So you should know your capabilities, a topic I will be talking next week about. You should have a feeling about your processes, your data, your information, your products, your experiences, and your brand and so on. So you should have a sound understanding of who you are, what are you capable of doing, which IT systems are in place, to know where to change. So there's this as-is state. So it's like a ship, and you have this as-is state, you have a certain operating model, you run certain business processes to create certain products, for example. And then you must make changes because new competitors, the market has changed, technology has changed. We all know the drivers that force us into constant changes. And today I'll talk about how to design a portfolio of changes that is the best portfolio. That's always a trade-off. What does best mean? We will talk about this in a few seconds. Maybe let's start with what's the status quo in most companies today. So what I've seen, what I see everywhere I go, typically strategy and goals are done by a small group of executives, maybe with some external consultants. And then they fall from the sky. They are some kind of imposed on the whole organization. So that's what I typically see. So not many people are invited to co-designing the goals. We think that's not a good idea. Typically, goals are weakly categorized. Yeah, you might have financial goals and maybe some categories. We have the goal to transform, to innovate or so, but we believe you must get stronger in the categories to get better categorization and prioritization of your goal. Typically, project portfolios drive change. And I underlined project because typically the project is the focus of your attention. And the company has maybe hundreds of projects constantly running, and not many people understand all the dependencies, what's going on, and there's so much change and so many projects. But usually the connection between the projects and the goals are pretty weak. Nobody really knows. So, and if you look at your organization, are you sure that you know for each project how it pays into the goals of your company? I don't see that quite often. So at the end, it means it's an output-based planning. You have a project, and at the end of the project, there is a change. You deliver a new product, you create a new software package, you re-engineer a process, whatever the change is. At the end, you have an output, but are you sure that you achieve the outcomes you want to have? Goals are outcomes. We will discuss this later. So all of the money, the investment goes into projects, means into outputs, and those are usually weakly connected with the goals and weakly connected with business architecture, if you want. So if you're part of the business architecture community, you know, of course, that there's always some capability models, process model out there, but project managers, I'm not sure if they're really connected to the work of the business or enterprise architect. So there's usually a weak connection. Maybe what does your project portfolio management look like today? And what I see always is similar to what I've shown here, right? So you have some ID, and then you have hundreds of projects. Usually they are named with an acronym. So there's this EPMM, HASV, Spot, Artistica, sometimes they are fancy names. But usually there's not really a good categorization as we see in the last column here, right? Usually say, oh, we do this for digital transformation. We do this for artificial intelligence. We do this for strategic reasons. But what does this mean? And is this a good category usually? Maybe we can find something better, and there will be some suggestions in a few minutes. Yeah, and of course, each project has red, yellow, green. Everybody does this, a milestone, a certain cost. Project management is still very much about time and money and output. And the connection to the goals and to the purpose and why do we need this output usually is quite weak. We want to change this with our work at Intersection Group. So as a summary, in most companies, what I see is mission, vision, strategy, goals are done by a few. Mission, vision, I mean, we all know companies that really have an compelling mission, but there are not that many. So if you look at the internet and say, wow, this is really a sexy mission that sparks my passion, that has a deeper purpose. There are companies out there that have that, but not so many. But yeah, so it means this identity, mission, vision is typically quite weak. Goals very often are finance obsessed. Every company has some goals. We want to increase revenues by 20%. Yeah, so if that's neoliberalism, that's capitalism. But is this the only kind of goals we should set us? Maybe we should think about other categories to balance the portfolio of goals in total. It's not about single goals. It's in my talk today. It's about how to design a portfolio that is optimized for who you are and your identity. And then you have multi-project management. You have projects, and that's a different place. And there's the multi-project management, or there are agile, safe, whatever, however you realize your projects. Usually the connection with the vision, mission, strategy goals is quite weak. And what we want to change as Intersection Group, and that's the topic for today, we believe that goals and strategy and mission vision should be co-designed. We believe in the power of true co-design of many, many people. So it's not a good idea that few executives just discuss a vision. Maybe they should use the wisdom of their people, wisdom of their business architects, service architects, so business experts. There are many people that know what's going on in the company. They are closer to reality. So that means one change we want to have is with all of our intersection group work, we believe in the power of collaborative co-design. And on the top, if you ever worked with designers, for example, with user experience or product designers, they are big in exploration. What's going on in the ecosystem, what's going on in the market, what changes has happened. Then you run interviews, you do some research to understand the ecosystem. And that's also not a thing many strategy and mission and purpose consultants are doing. That's also what we want to bring together. And in total, we want to have a seamless design approach between purpose, mission, vision, strategy, goals, and projects are only a means to achieve goals. So that's the big change. Yeah, we put goals in the center, and projects, yeah, you can do it in scaled agile way, you can do it in PMI, whatever, waterfall way. But at the end, it's only a tool to make the right changes to achieve the right goals. So let's focus on goals, not on projects. And I'm talking about goals a lot today. What do we mean by goals? And we have a definition for us in Intersection Group. We say a goal is an intended outcome that is aligned with the identity and strategy of the enterprise. And it depends, of course, on your identity if the goals are suitable. So it's very different if you're an American investment bank or if you're something like a NGO, Greenpeace or something. The different identity, you can understand different flavors of goals, very different stuff. And aligned with the strategy of the enterprise. I will say a few words about what strategy is and how we see it, and how it plays together with goals in a few seconds. But first, we should dive deeper into the understanding outputs versus outcome. If you go to LinkedIn, everybody is a fan of outcome. Yeah, that's really a cool thing. Outcomes over outputs. And we agree to that, but it's not that simple. So for example, I have this nice example here. A company performs activities and these activities create an output, a product in that case, a convertible, so a car, so that's a nice car, and the intended outcome, and that's the brand of BMW, for example. So there are luxury car manufacturers that say, hey, it's about fun driving. That's the outcome. And we design our cars, our convertibles in a way that maximize the fun because that's part of our brand. And that's a good idea. And they sell tons of cars and they're making a lot of money because I think their brand is very much aligned with the outcomes and the identity. That's perfect. The problem is that I only can control the output. I can create the best convertible of the planet. But what could happen are unintended outcomes. So you manufacture a convertible, you create an output. This output should have the goal to have fun driving, but the driver drives too fast. Maybe he or she is drunk, and then there is an accident and people get killed. So that's an unintended outcome. And this is very important to understand because engineering for outputs, creating products, projects, running projects that create outputs, you can plan for that. Outcomes, that's a very different story because the outcome happens at the client system, not inside the company. So we have some control. We can design the best products. We can do some market research, but we can only hope to achieve the intended outcome. But of course, we should design the identity, the whole company for outcomes. But it's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, for now, so after 15 minutes, a little exercise before we discuss a bit what is a good goal portfolios. What you see here are 13 or so potential goals for a railway company. purposeful goals for a railway company. So, and I would like to ask you to type to the chat numbers where you think these are good goals. And we don't say, I don't say, tell you what good means, but what do you think, which goals are good? Just type the numbers to the chat. Okay, we have number one. Yeah, let's see. Four. So many fours. That's cool. Comfortable traveling. 6. What do we have? Stop climate change. Okay. 13. Bring people together. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think they are not really bad goals. Maybe an SAP upgrade and no one has picked the 10 is not a good goal. But these goals are very different. For example, the first one was number one, increased revenue. Yes, that can be a goal. Yeah, of course. But this is a purposeful goal. Is it a way to spark the passion in the people? So these financial goals are very important for a company, for the owner of the company. Of course they are. But it can be very different depending on your identity, depending on what you are. If you're an American investment bank, that will be very different from Greenpeace or something like that. Yeah, so yes, but it depends on the type of company, of course. And then we have more people travel with less CO2. Many people have chosen this stop climate change and so on. And I would certainly agree because this is very much related to the purpose of your customers. And so if you are a railway company, many railway companies are doing it today, say, yeah, that's a good goal. And we really want to do that. We want to help the earth to do something about climate change. And somebody picked number 6, I think. Yeah. I'm not sure about this number 6 because stop climate change might be a bit big because you should also maybe some of you have learned about that goals should also be achievable. Yeah, and the question is if I'm a railway company and I say my goal is to stop the climate change, my first question would be, is this realistic? Can you do this alone, or can you only reduce the CO2? Let's see. Okay, but yeah, so that was just a little exercise, and we will talk about these categories a bit better. I picked a few of them. But with this exercise, what I wanted to say is it's not so easy to say this is a bad goal and this is a good goal if you don't know too much about the identity of the company. And identity with the intersection group work is the green facet. And in this green facet, we have something like purpose. Why are we here? Mission statement, this stuff. And story. What are we doing? And is this story usually in the mission statement there's a part what we do in this mission statement. Is this aligned with this identity? Is this trusted? Do people believe us? Does it make us different and unique? And there's the whole mission vision topic inside there. What the message here is for today, be aware that your goal portfolio must be aligned with your identity. If it's not, then your brand falls apart, because in that case, customers don't get the message because it's not aligned, the goals and the identity. And it's clear that, for example, British Railways and Google, they have very different brands. So some goals might be very suitable for Google, but maybe not for British Railways. So if Google says we want to travel to Mars, some people might believe it. If British Railways does, maybe not so much because it doesn't fit their legacy, it doesn't fit their history. Yeah. So that's one criterion to find good goals. Are they really aligned with who we are? That leads to deep questions because who are we? So usually the process of understanding who we are is not done in enough depth. That's what I see in companies. And the second way to categorize those goals, to get to a better goal portfolio management, is to ask yourself who benefits. At the end, each goal should have a clear person or legal person or group of people that benefits. And the first thing that comes to mind to people are typically customers. Yeah, so we are a customer first company. customers everything. But reality quite often is you also have an owner, and the owner wants to make some money. So then he presses, I need more money from this company. But that depends on the owner, and that depends on the identity of the company. And then companies depends on your industry, of course, a lot of money just to satisfy the legal authorities. There are some laws, and banks, for example, need to comply with Basel and with other legal issues. And then there's this big issue: we serve humanity. That's the deepest purpose, of course. Greenpeace, yeah, and some companies are strong on this aspect. And it's very important that you ask yourself the question, for each project you run, which goals does it serve, and which goal and which person benefits from these goals? And then you can have a look at this portfolio and see, okay, where are we? Is it where we want to be? For example, so this goal categories for the customer, it's very much about new products, better price, better service, better experiences. That's typical to invest some money to achieve goals that create better experiences, better products for your customers. Makes a whole lot of sense to make a goal, an investment in goals to help your customers, depending on your identity. Legal authorities, usually it's a must do, that's the boring stuff, but there are industries where 50% of the money is only put into legal, means that a lot of energy and change is lost, if you want, and cannot be used for innovations and for customer stuff, for example. Yeah, and then there's this big humanity, yeah, environment, purpose for society, innovation, bring mankind forward, and so on. That's typically strong if you can have a story and if you have an identity that radiates this message. This is typically a strong brand message. Yeah, and then there's an owner. Not all owners, of course, are driven only by return on investment, by growth. Some are driven by image, continuance. So maybe if it's a family-led business, yeah, people are interested to pass the company to the next generation and so on. So it's very important, of course, to understand the owner. And so the structure of the company very much has impacts your goal portfolio. And what we suggest is, well, have a look at your goals and categorize the goals you have in your goal portfolio and say, okay, how much do we invest for whom? How much do we invest for better customer experience? Because we have only 100 of money, as 100, I don't know, that amount of money. And we need to make a decision. Shall we spend it more for the customer, more for the owner? Shall we spend more for legal authorities? And of course, where you are in this triangle or square, so we have four parts here, in this square is dependent from who you are, from your brand. And you can imagine that Greenpeace is on a very different place compared to City of Vienna, very citizen-driven, of course, and so on. So that's also one of the message. Align your goal portfolio with who you are and who benefits. When we connect this discussion again to our enterprise design facet model, and there will be a webinar, I think in February, where we'll dive into these facets to more detail. It's very important to understand who we are today. Who we are, as I discussed, is part of the identity, the mission, the purpose statement, this deeper why. So Synex, start with why discussion. That's the green facet. But of course, you must also know what are we capable of doing today. So what's going on? What are our strengths? What machines do we own? What processes? What capabilities do we have? What people do we have? So you must know your current resources, your current skills, your current capabilities to understand where to change. So that's the blue facet. And you must understand the experience you provide to the outer world. How do we feel? How do people feel us when they get in contact, when they buy a product, when they use a service, for example. And all of these facets, you have a status quo. And with enterprise design and design-driven goal portfolio management, what we want to encourage people is to dive deeper into who you are today, to understand what possibilities do I have to change. Because if you are an elephant, it might not be so easy to transfer to a zebra, for example, might not be possible. So if British Railways says, I want to fly to Mars tomorrow, sounds like a cool mission and a super, super fancy goal, but it's not feasible. And then you lose those people. So that means your goal portfolio should and must be aligned with a sound understanding of who you are. And what I see in companies, typically, companies are not so aware about their strengths. They don't have a capability model. I'll be talking about this topic next week. And that's a problem. If you don't know your strengths, if you don't know who you are to a certain degree, it's very hard to find the proper goal. So the goals should always be aligned with who you are today. Yeah, and what you can do then is you can see, okay, I have this amount of money, this amount of people, if you want, of energy. Investing is not always only about money. It's always about people, passion, energy. So with investment, we don't only mean money, but at the end, you might have 100% of your investment possibilities. And then you can aggregate the goals and say, okay, how much do we invest to enhance the experience to people? How much do we invest in new products, in new experiences? How much do we need to invest into legal? How much do we invest into purpose, humanity, mankind? And how much do we invest into serving the owner better, into our efficiency maybe, to reduce the operating costs, for example. And when you aggregate your projects to goals and to goals to your categories, then you can come to a picture like this. And then you can present it to the boardroom and say, okay, that's what we are doing today. Is this what we want to do? Is this connected with our brand, for example? And that's the idea. Yeah, and then the last section of my presentation. If there was only one thing that you could influence in your company, and I discussed this with Chris Potts when I met him in Lisbon 2 or 3 years ago. Some changes seem really simple, and if you have a magic wand and could change one thing in your company, what we suggest is a simple change. So currently, what you usually have, you have a list of projects, and we suggest that put goals in the first column of your goal portfolio. So this is a huge change from a project portfolio to a goal portfolio, because what happens then is you focus the attention of every business decision on the goal, and you nudge the attention away from project, output to outcome. Because now you can have a look in how much to invest in this goal, how much to invest in punctuality, how much to invest in CO2 reduction in this or in that goal. That's the one thing. And the other thing is, think about the categories. So maybe these are too fussy. Maybe it makes sense to find categories like how much do we invest in the customer, how much do we invest in the owner, for the owner, and so on. And we call this approach design-driven goal portfolio management. What does this mean, design-driven? Maybe you've seen our intersection loop before. What does it mean? It means you start in the center of this loop with these three facets. So you should always start with a sound understanding of who you are today. What are we capable of doing, as mentioned before? What are our IT systems? Where do we have problems? Which machines, which skills do we have? What are the skills of our people? Which products do we have in the red facets? How is our brand perceived today? That's also a value. So start with a very sound understanding of who you are and take some time to model your as-is state. With Edgy, we have a product for doing exactly that. So you start with a sound understanding who you are. And then what we can learn from the designers is this exploration of the ecosystem. So run survey, and there are techniques to understand what's going on the market, to understand customer needs, to understand what's going on in society, to find topics where a company maybe can launch some products to achieve a deeper purpose. And that's the exploration phase. And then step number 3, when you go back the loop on the bottom of the left side, you co-design the goal portfolio options. We want to invite many people to a facilitated goal portfolio workshop. Design sprints might be a format, but there are others. So there can be workshop formats, and we encourage companies to broaden the goal design process. Goals shouldn't just fall from the sky. And we all know what happens when you impose goals on people. It's similar to what happens when you impose a new org chart on people. You get frustration. People want to be part of this co-design space. And having a language, a sound understanding of who you are, this kind of transparency in the co-design process is a very powerful instrument, because now this who are we is broadened, and it's not done by a small group of our executives. Yeah, and then in the center, it's about making decisions. At the end, you must find some kind of governance and some decision model that works best for you. And there's a lot of discussion going on with autonomous decisions, with, I don't know, holacracy, sociocracy, and board structures. And, this decision making, how shall we make better decisions, is a broad topic. What we want to add to this discussion as Intersection Group is we want to make informed decisions. And to make informed decisions, it's a good idea to have a sound understanding, a sound model of your current state, enterprise, capabilities, products, experiences, identity, and scenarios for the future. So in this co-design options phase, people are here to co-design scenarios, and then it's up to the people that are accountable to make the right decisions to pick one of these scenarios, because usually we can say, okay, we could have this goal portfolio, or we can have that goal portfolios. But somebody must make a decision, because this decision can be a huge investment and a huge change, and hopefully in the right decision. So that's what we mean by design-driven goal portfolio management. Design-driven means sound understanding of your current enterprise design, use tools coming from the design worlds, exploration, co-design, to enrich the process of creating a goal portfolio. That's the idea of this whole approach. But when is it good? So that's already a summary of what I've discussed, what I presented today. What I said is, yeah, it's good when it's aligned to the identity of the enterprise. When people say, hey, I have a look at your goals, I understand them, and they're pretty aligned with your identity, and I believe in these goals. If it's misaligned, people don't trust the goals, and you lose a lot of passion and energy in the employees, for example. It should be based on a solid knowledge about your current capabilities, of course. And like any portfolio, it's similar to a financial portfolio. You must balance the opportunity to risk ratio. Some changes are risky, and depending on your identity, companies in these digital transformation times must take certain risks. But maybe it's not a good idea to invest all of your money in a highly risky change. Maybe you should have a look and invest it clever, maybe in making some existing processes better. So that's not a risky investment. So just invest in your current product portfolio. That's less risky than starting a journey to Mars, for example. Of course it is. So balance this opportunities risk ratio based on your identity, based on an understanding of your skills. Yeah, so Tesla or Google taking other risks than more conservative companies, and that's okay. Balance short and long term. What we usually see here, companies are not good in medium and long term goals. Because usually you have an owner and they says, I want to make more money now. Next year, I want to increase the revenue. That's a short-term goal. Or we need new products for the market on the left side. Or we have law changes in law that are starting next year, for example. Security efficiency. So there's a lot of noise and a lot of forces that nudge or force the company in the direction of investing in short-term stuff. But with architecture, enterprise design, we say, okay, but sometimes you must always also invest in sustainable stuff, in long-term stuff, in research and development, in enhancing the adaptivity of your company. For example, in enhancing the adaptivity of your IT structures, so legacy renovation. That's a long-term goal that pays off, but maybe after 5 years. And companies usually, many companies don't plan for this long time span. That's a pity, yeah, right? So when you have your goal portfolio and to draw a diagram like this, maybe you can impress the boardroom and ask them, well, we now have 90 projects and 85 are short-term only. What do we invest that we are around in 5 years, in 10 years, in adaptivity, in research and development, in innovation? Is this balanced? And if it's balanced, okay. But this diagram, I think, is very important also. Yeah, challenging but realistic. We had this with the stop climate change. Might not be realistic for a railway company, maybe. Clarity, ease of communication, right? Yeah, and of course, a good goal and the whole portfolio of goals should spark the passion in your employee. And that works if they are realistic and if they are aligned with the purpose and the story of the employees and so on. So there are some criteria to find out when a goal portfolio is good. Yeah, and so that's the final slide for my presentation today. How could a goal portfolio look like? As mentioned in a previous slide, put the goal in the first column. So this is the railway company again. So you say you have the goal for seamless mobility. Who benefits? That's a customer goal. Or punctuality. Who benefits? It's the customer. Safety. Yeah, that's customer, but also legal, because as a railway company, there's a lot of laws you must comply with to keep the railway, the transportation safe. Environment, so you can have the goal for CO2 reduction, humanity, benefits, and so on, means that you can categorize the goals by categories who benefits. And then on the right side, these are the projects, right? So project 1 to project 7. And for example, the right project, project 7, only pays into cost efficiency. That might be some typical business process re-engineering or a cost reduction program that does not pay into any purposeful stuff, but sometimes it's needed, of course, makes sense. And then project 6, bring people together, pays into this bring people together goal via new services, maybe a bit of cost efficiency. And what we want to show here is that typically a project contributes to several goals, but you should always try to find what's the primary contribution, right? So for example, the project 1 primary contribution is seamless mobility, but it's also about adaptivity and so on. And with this kind of matrix, what you do is with each project, you start with each change that is started by your boardroom or people decided to start it. You always focus and always have an overview about what does it mean for our goal portfolio. So final summary, know who you are and who you serve, invest in the right decisions, invest in the right design elements, better identity, architecture, or experience. Co-design goals. Don't do it in a small group of people. Shift your portfolio from projects to goals. Manage outputs to manage outcomes, but that's tricky. Yeah, that's a tricky one. And invest in the best goal portfolio means that you must find better ways to categorize them and to say, okay, does this fit the brand? And is our brand message, our brand value connected to the goals? So focus all investments in your enterprise through a well-designed portfolio. That's the final message. All right. That's the message for today. And I've only 3 slides, I think, about who we are. As mentioned in the beginning, I'm the president and founder of the Intersection Group, and that's our identity. So the logo is cool, I think. The mission statement is we help people create better enterprises. So what we do is we, together with our currently 86 or so advising members, we create tools. So the first thing will be launched in April, a bit of a surprise. It will be called Edgy. Let's see. And all of our tools are only there to help people create better enterprises. And we are a not-for-profit association, and a lot of people are connected. Chris Potts used to be a member, and we have several other people in a diverse group of people. We believe it's very important for our approach that we have business analysts, business architects, experienced designers, organizational designers. So we believe that this co-design of better enterprises can only happen if we invite various disciplines. We don't want to become the super discipline of enterprise design. We just want to invite all these experts from various fields to a co-design process, right? So enterprise architects, IT people, together with product designers, for example, and some people structuring the organization, the mission. All of these parts are typically done by different disciplines. And with our tools and our community, we are discussing all the content with this community. We want to bring tools, produce tools that help people to connect and to co-create better enterprises. Yeah, and that's the final advertisement for our upcoming webinars. We do them weekly. So the next one will be about business capability maps. I've talked a bit today about them. There's a lot of confusion in this topic. And we spent the last 2 years in trying to detangle this and to say, okay, what is it? Because out there, there's a lot of confusion in business capability maps. But for us, it's a very fundamental concept. And then Milan will be talking together with Jim Kalbach, who has written this Jobs to be Done methodology about very much about the red facet. What does it mean to be a customer-driven enterprise? Then we have the stories and so on. But I don't want to bore you with that. You can go to our webpage and to the event section and register for more. And if you haven't already ordered our book, please do, because there are 35 ways to radically increase your impact on the enterprise. This was the first publication by Intersection Group, and we believe that these patterns are very fundamental for our approach, because that helps you to bring in many people and co-design with them, get in touch with them, invite them, build trust with them, model, get a management mandate, executive mandate, and so on. Yeah, and so in case you have any question, you can connect to us on LinkedIn or with me on LinkedIn, or you just type them to the chat. Okay, let me have a look if I can find some questions here. Okay. I can't find a single question that. Oops. No. So if you have any questions, just type them in now. Excellent session. Thank you. Thank you a lot. Cool. Inspiring. Yes, yes. Any more questions by you guys? Someone is typing, so I'm waiting for someone. Ah, this is a nice one. Mark as a question. Ciao, goal portfolio ops. That's an interesting one. Maybe that's something that is missing because we have now this biz dev ops. So you have business people, but that means that you have a product owner, and product owners are not always very much aligned with the goals of the companies. And typically, product owners, like in biz dev ops, are not very much aligned with a coherent enterprise design. So this is a nice wording. I need to think about it. Thank you very much. How do you get alignment across a network of organizations, such as in a supply chain? Oh, that's a big question. And I must be really honest there. We spent the last 2-3 years to come up with a design approach and an enterprise design language that will be published in April. And it focuses very much about a business and the Milky Way. So if you know about our Milky Way map, that's very much about an enterprise and the goals of a single enterprise in the center. And we already have started the discussions. What does it mean? Exactly your question. So usually in an enterprise is an ambitious endeavor. Many partners are connected by supply chains or other kinds of partnerships. What does this mean? If you can help us with the answer, I would be really happy because we are just started this one. If mission and strategy are weak, how can you design a good portfolio of goals? You can't. But I think it's a feedback loop. I think it should be co-designed in a coherent way. Typically, mission starts with some executives and external consultants, and then you write some content and some mission statement, for example. And that's the perfect moment for a business architect, enterprise designer that wants to go deeper, project portfolio manager, goal strategy guy, to challenge it. Yeah, the best mission statement is a mission statement that is challenged by people that are closer to realization. So you have a mission, then a strategy, enterprise designer, business architects. Then you have people that must make it work, software developers, I don't know, business experts that must run the processes. And having a feedback cycle between the actual task, what's going on in the everyday work, where is the reality, connected to mission, vision, strategy, that's what we suggest. And my answer is no, it can't, because if you have a weak mission statement, weak strategy, you cannot design a good portfolio. That's true. Okay, thanks, Ernest. So please just contact me. I'm waiting for your ideas. That's good. Interesting observation. Maybe that's the true reason why companies are still project-centric. Yeah. Maybe the reason is that this outcome-based strategy is much harder to manage, to control, to engineer to. That's I think I believe that, yeah. How do you relate all of this to the more classic business architecture? I don't know exactly what you mean by classic. So if you mean the work of the Business Architecture Guild, for example, that has been, I think they have been around for a decade or 12 years or so. I think that our approach is much broader and more holistic, and much less IT-centric. Even if people call it business architecture, it still comes out from the head from IT people. And in our community, we have brand designer, organizational designers, and we have a strong focus on the green and the red facet. I don't see that in Bespoke, for example. They also have product and organization, but not in the core. That's interesting. And I've never seen a business architect designing an organization or designing a product. So anybody else does it. And that's the reason why we say our approach, it's not a discipline. It's a connector of disciplines. And the wisdom of the Business Architecture Guild, the Bespoke, is important. Yeah, they have interesting viewpoints, but it's only one viewpoint. And then you have the experienced designer and the org designer and so many disciplines with their own methodologies. We want to connect them. Maybe that's the message. All right, so this is the last call for questions. BR. Yes, I think, and information probably, information entities. We don't have value chains, for examples, but if you're interested, stay tuned. There will be a webinar on Edgy, I think in March or so. That we will discuss about our model. Today, this was this strategy and goal part. There's another question. Are you reliant on there being a single defined strategy where quite often there's an IT strategy, ops strategy? I think that's a pity if there is. And in my current employer, I'm working hard to tell my boss, who's the CIO, to say, why do we need an IT strategy? I don't know. So maybe, but I think the problem at some companies, what I see is there are some heads of departments and they want to have their own strategy because then they are autonomous and they don't must deal with some political discussions with the corporate strategy done by the C-suite because that's so incomplete. And then now I'm the CEO, I make the IT strategy, and then and that's a pity, even if they are not aligned. So from my point of view, strategy, there should be one strategy, business strategy, and I can highly recommend. I think I haven't done this. The awesome book by Hoverstead. Yeah, this one. Patterns of Strategy. I think he has 60. And we think strategy sets the direction for the design of the goal portfolio and the realization of intended outcomes. So it could be, of course, that your IT department has certain goals for the departments. And it could be that some IT goals, we want to go to the cloud, can be a goal in the IT strategy. But who benefits? Why? I don't know. So that's not an end, that's a means. Okay, Ernest, I think we must talk. So please message me. More than welcome if you want to contribute. We are just at the beginning with this topic. What we did so far, we connected to the awesome work of Chris Potts, and also Patrick was one of our presenters at one of our conferences. So maybe next year we want to better incorporate these patterns. I believe in patterns of strategy, but the whole strategy topic, we know it's huge and there's a lot of stuff out there. We want to add to this stuff that say, okay, that's cool, but please keep it pragmatic. All of our intersection group work should be pragmatic. Keep it pragmatic and connect it to a sound enterprise design model. Because if you just do strategy and you can't take your finger and point to a capability on a capability map, then your strategy is not aligned with your business architecture. And your business architecture, and then business architecture should be aligned with the projects, the change projects. So if you're a business architect and you're not in the boardroom and strategy is being crafted, that's also a pity, but most companies don't have a sound capability model. That's the next pity. And that's exactly the way we want to work as intersection group, to invite all these bright minds. We are not there, we don't have all the wisdom. So what we do is we will ask Patrick, for example, for some workshops and say, okay, what does it mean to connect his patterns with our when? That's it. Yeah, it's the strategy cascade. That's it. Exactly. Agreed. Okay. Oof. Because these questions are tough, right? And they are bigger than a single mind like me. You know that these are really big topics. But we have 86 members now. All right. So if there are no more questions, I can't see anybody typing. I just want to say thank you for this session. Thank you for this cool idea with the goal DevOps, was it? And thanks, Ernest, for your suggestion. We should talk. Please stay tuned. There are more webinars to come. We do them weekly, and there will be AG version 1.0 published in the second quarter, our enterprise design language, also connected to Goal and so on. Much to come. Stay tuned, and I'm hoping to see many of you at one of our next webinars. So see you, and see you next time, hopefully. Bye.